Hello, my name is Kainson Munonye, and thanks for joining me as I begin my discussion on planned risk responses. Planned risk responses happen to be the fifth of the processes we are discussing under the project risk management knowledge area. So the point is, after identifying all the risks for the project, you've analyzed them, you've grouped them, prioritized them, perform quantitative risk analysis. What then do you do? How do you plan to handle this risk if they occur? That is what we are going to examine under planned risk responses. Planned risk response is the process of developing options and actions to enhance opportunities and reduce threats to project objectives. The key benefit of the planned risk response process is that it addresses the risk by their priority, inserting resources and activities into the budget, schedule, and project management plan as needed. So note that each risk response requires an understanding of the mechanism by which it will address the risk. And this is the mechanism used to analyze the risk response plan is having the desired effect. It includes identification and assignment of one person, the risk owner or the owner of risk response, to take responsibility for each agreed to and funded risk response. Risk response should be appropriate for the significance of the risk, cost effective in meeting the challenge, realistic within the project context, agreed upon by all parties involved, and owned by a responsible person. Let's now take a look at the ITTOs of the planned risk responses. We have two inputs to planned risk responses, and they are the risk management plan and the risk register. There are four tools and techniques used for planned risk response: strategies for positive risks or threats, strategies for negative risks, or I think I'm mixing it up. It should be strategy for positive risks or opportunities. Okay, so this is where we have opportunities and not threats. So negative risk or threats, positive risks or what? Yeah, opportunities. Alright, so I think I mixed it up when I was making up this presentation. Okay, so this is what we have. So negative risk should be threats. Okay, should be threats to the project objectives. You have to plan something for them. Outputs should be project management plan updates and project document updates. Let's now look at some of these inputs, tools and techniques, and outputs. Of course, clearly we need the risk management plan for us to plan the risk responses. Important components of the risk management plan include roles and responsibilities, risk analysis definitions, timing for reviews, the risk threshold for low, moderate, and high risks. A risk threshold help identify those risks for which specific responses are needed. Okay, now we have the risk register. The risk register refers to identified risks, root causes of risks, lists of potential responses, risk owners, symptoms and warning signs, the relative ratings of or priority of the risk, project risk, and the risk requiring responses in the near term, and the risk for additional analysis and response, trend in qualitative analysis results, and watch lists of low priority lists, risks within the register. So the risk register contains a whole lot of information, we call it metadata, about each of the risks that has been identified. So we need it for us to be able to plan the response for each of the risks identified. Now the tools and techniques are very important. You have to pay good attention to this part. The tools and techniques we are going to examine, but risk analysis tools such as decision tree analysis can be used to choose the most appropriate responses. Specific actions are developed to implement that strategy, including primary and backup strategies as necessary. Let's now take a look at some of the terms that are necessary for you to understand when it comes to planning risk response. The first one is fallback plan. What is a fallback plan? A fallback plan is a strategy that is put in place, okay, or a response plan that is put in place in case the selected strategy did not work. Like some people say, the first plan does not work. What do? Some say you now choose a plan B. So the fallback plan, let's call it a plan B. The main plan didn't work, then you choose a second plan. Let me try to illustrate. Let's take, for instance, you are traveling on your car to a distant place, and now you've tried to use the spare tire. After, let's assume that you just have a flat tire, okay, and the first thing you try to do, you try to put in the spare tire, but immediately you check the spare tire to use it, you also find out the spare tire is flat, meaning that this plan of using the spare tire has failed again. So what do? A fallback plan will be get a vulcanizer to fix the two tires. Okay, so that's a fallback plan. When the response plan fails, you now have a fallback plan. Of course, the plan may have to do with putting more money in your pocket to be able to handle all of this. Let's now look at the next term, that is secondary risks. Secondary risks are risks that arise as a direct result of implementing a risk response. Okay, let's take another example. Let's take, for instance, in your project, the workers has decided to go on strike, and then what is your response to this? Maybe, okay, get consultants to start doing the work. That's the plan. The workers has gone to strike. Instead of to stay and be waiting for them to come back, you just get some consultants or contractors to do the work. And now what happens? You find out that these consultants are incompetent and they need more training. So that's another risk that arises. The first one is the workers going on strike, and the second one, discovering that your contractors that you just hired are incompetent. That's a secondary risk. So a risk arising due to implementing a risk response. Contingency reserve, I've discussed it previously on some of my presentation, is allocated for time or cost, maybe amount of time reserved or amount of money reserved. Okay, so may also include identification of the condition that trigger its use. Just to mention one that I did not outline here, a trigger. A trigger is a warning sign that shows that a risk event is about to occur. Let's now take a look at strategies for negative risks or threats. Strategies for negative risk or threat. Take note that a risk is an uncertain event that may have a negative or positive impact. So for risk events that will have a negative impact, what do you want to do? You want to either avoid them or transfer them to a third party, or you mitigate them. Let's now look at these terms to see exactly what they are. We also have another strategy, that is accept. But accept strategy can also be used for negative risks and also positive risks. Avoidance and mitigation strategies are usually good strategies for critical risks with high impact, while transference and acceptance are usually good strategies for threats that are less critical and with low overall impact. Alright, let's now look at them one after the other, starting with the first strategy, and that is avoid. Risk avoidance is simply where the project team decides to eliminate the threats or the project from its impact. So what you do is that you might change the project management plan to eliminate the threat. That is avoid. The project manager may also isolate the project objective from the risk impact or change the objective that is in jeopardy. Example of this may be extending the schedule, changing the strategy, or reducing the scope. The most radical approach will be to shut down or abort the project altogether. Some risks that arise early in the project can be avoided by clarifying requirements, obtaining information, improving communication, or acquiring expertise. Let me just see if I can give a clear example of how a avoidance strategy is applied. Let's take, for instance, you have a project of dualizing the road, okay? And one of the risks you envisage is that persons from the community where the road will pass through might frown. They might actually go on demonstration. They might stop your project. So what will you do? You want to avoid it. So you might either decide, okay, now have to carefully avoid allowing the road to pass through the trouble zones, something like that. We also have another strategy for negative risks or threat, that is transfer. It simply means you shift the impact of the threat to a third party. Okay, you simply give another party responsibility for managing this risk. So this risk, you are not avoiding it, you are not eliminating it, is there, but it's now somebody else's responsibility. Transference tools can be quite diverse. It may be use of insurance, performance bonds, warranties, guarantees. Contracts or agreements may be used also to transfer liability for specified risks to another party. So if you purchase an insurance, you are moving the risk to the insurance company. So that is how to transfer to a third party. In many cases, use of a cost plus contract may transfer the cost risk to the buyer, while a fixed price contract may transfer the risk to the seller. The third strategy is mitigate. Risk mitigation is a strategy that you don't avoid the risk, but you put a plan in place to reduce the probability of this risk occurring or the impact. It also implies reduction in the probability and impact of the risk to be within acceptable threshold. Let's take, for example, if you want to install a data center in your organization, and you find out that there's power outage from time to time, and then you decide to buy a generator. Let's say a generator that will always trigger when there is power outage. So what you are doing is that the risk is there. The power outage might actually occur, but if it occurs, the generator takes care of it by automatically switching on, and you have your equipment in place. So mitigation is very important in a very important aspect of risk strategy for managing negative risks. Let's now look at accept. Sometimes negative risks actually might be accepted. Why? Because the team might decide to just acknowledge the risk and leave it until it occurs. It's adopted when it's not possible or cost effective to address a specific risk in any other way. This strategy can be either passive or active. Let me just quickly give an example again. That's something that happens in Nigeria from time to time. Let's take, for instance, you're about to build your base in a community, or let's say a base station. A telecoms company want to build a base station in a community. They've already bought the parcel of land, they paid for it, they have all the agreements, but then it's possible that some hoodlums might pose an attack. Well, that is possible. What do? They accept it. Once anybody shows up, they handle it. So that is it. So we are saying that to accept a risk, it can be passive or active. Passive acceptance requires you don't take any action, you just leave it. If it happens, you handle it. We also have active acceptance, is to establish a contingency reserve, including amounts of time, money, or resources to handle the risks. Alright, let's now look at the second tool and techniques for planned risk response, and that is strategies for positive risk opportunities. Remember, a risk might actually be positive, something that contributes positively to the objective of the project. There are three strategies for positive risks or opportunities. One of them is share. We have enhance. We also have accept, and we have exploit. Let's start with exploit. The exploit strategy may be selected for risks with positive impact where organizations wishes to ensure that the opportunity is realized. This strategy seeks to eliminate the uncertainty associated with a particular upside risk by ensuring that the opportunity definitely happens. Examples of directly exploiting response include assigning an organization's most talented resources to the project to reduce the time to completion, or using new technologies to upgrade this and help reduce costs and duration required to realize the project objectives. Let's now look at enhance. Enhance is used to increase the probability of the positive impacts of the opportunity. Okay, identifying and maximizing the key drivers of these positive impact risks may increase the probability of the occurrence. Example of enhancing opportunity includes adding more resources to an activity to finish early. What of share? Maybe going into partnership, joint venture with another company, so that you make sure the opportunity is realized and the benefits can be shared. Then we also have accept, being willing to take advantage of the opportunity if it arises, but not actively pursuing it. Alright, let's now look at the third tool and technique, and that is contingent response strategies. Some responses are designed for use if certain events occur. For some risks, it is appropriate for the project team to make response plans that will only be executed under certain predefined conditions, if it is believed that there will be sufficient warning to implement the plan. Events that trigger the contingency reserve, such as missing intermediate milestones or gaining higher priority with a supplier, should be identified, defined, and tracked. Risk responses identified using these techniques are often called contingency plans or fallback plans, and include identified triggering events that set the plan in effect. Remember, we mentioned trigger or triggering events that help you to have an indication that there is an impending risk. Expert judgment has also been mentioned, trying to get response from experienced experts to help you make a right plan. The output for plan risk response is project management plan updates. Remember, the project management plan is a collection of all the other subsidiary plans and also baselines. So the output should be updates to this plan. For instance, the schedule management plan may have to be updated to add some contingency to take care of negative risks. Cost management plan might also have to be updated. Other plans and baselines, including the quality management plan, the stakeholder management plan, communication management plan, cost baseline, schedule baseline, etc. project document update is another output of the plan risk responses. Risk register is one of the important project documents that might be updated to give more details to risk that has been identified and prioritized. Often, the high moderate risks are addressed in detail. Risks judged to be of low priority are included in the watch list for periodic monitoring. Updates can include risk owners and assigned responsibilities, strategies, actions, triggers, budget, fallback plans, etc. Other documents that might be updated may be assumption, log updates, technical documentations, and change requests. So this is how we wind up our discussion as under plan risk response. This discussion has been exhaustive. I want you to spend some time, maybe rewind, try to get used to what we've discussed here. As usual, I'm going to take you back to the ITTOS page so that you'll try to understand or even memorize these ITTOs. I'd like to thank you very much for joining me. I'll also invite you to join me in my next presentation as I'm going to start our discussion on control risks. That is the last process for the risk management knowledge area.